What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Havilak. And over the last week, Mark, we had a bunch of trades go through. It really seems like a lot of these GMs are trying to get these trades done before that Four Nations face-off tournament. We're going to go sort of in depth and talk about the four trades that happened over the week. But before we get into all of that, how are you doing right now?
And not too bad for sure. What an exciting weekend in the hockey world, eh? Like the deadline's like less than 5 weeks away here. It felt like we almost had like a mini deadline from kind of Friday night to like Sunday morning for, I don't want to say like big trades, but I wouldn't say like they're like minor trades either. So I mean, we're going to kind of discuss those today. Kind of curious to see these teams moving forward and how it affects those teams. But how you been doing, man, this past week?
I've been doing good, dude. The NHL, man, it's on fire right now with all these trades going through. It's a great time to be a fan of the NHL. Even I'm an NBA fan, man, and like there was a massive trade in the NBA. I don't know if you know that Luka
Dude, they
Doncic
couldn't
went to the
have they
Mavs,
couldn't let
but
us have like one weekend, eh?
yeah, it's like all around sports right now. It's just super entertaining. We got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, so that's always going
Yeah.
to be a blast, right? So it's a great time to be a sports fan right now. Let's get right into all of these trades, though, in the NHL. First up, the JT Miller saga has finally come to an end. The Vancouver Canucks have traded him along with Eric Brandstrom and Jackson Dorrington to the New York Rangers. In return, the Canucks got Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and a 2025 first round pick. And then hours later, the Canucks traded Danton Heinen, Vincent Desharnais, and Melvin Fernstrom to the Rangers' first round pick, pardon me, to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. Mark, we'll start up with the Canucks here because they had sort of the most movement throughout those two trades. What are your thoughts there for them and sort of what they sent out and what they brought in?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think some people disagree, but I think it was a little bit underwhelming. I think that they probably could have utilized, especially that first round pick better. Look, I understand the fact that JT Miller's got a no move clause. I mean, the one team he kind of really signaled he wanted to go back to was the Rangers. I don't really know if they ever discussed other teams with him. The thing was, is this really seemed like the exact same deal that fell through last week.
Yeah.
Like Mancini was involved, a first was involved, and Hito was involved. So it seemed like, according to Sarah Valley, the one thing that kind of moved the needle a bit was like Brandstrom. Like the Rangers wanted another like depth player, considering they were like getting the full 8 million, which is kind of weird to me. I don't know if anything with like the pick protection, maybe that was something too that wasn't involved, and then that started to be involved as well. That prospect, I mean, I don't really think he's got much upside of making the NHL. I think he's just kind of like a throw in there. Um, so yeah, it's hard, right? Like with the Canucks, like it's obviously like Zibanejad didn't really seem like an option. Like with the no move clause, probably Vancouver didn't really have much interest, to be honest with you. And then it's like, who else are the Rangers really going to give up, like roster wise, when they're not willing to give up Schneider? I don't know about what Keandre Miller. I don't know what the deal was with that. Lindgren, I don't think that's the type of defenseman they were looking for, to be quite honest with you. They have more guys that are like shutdown guys. So I think they were kind of limited, I will say. I don't love the trade, though, because like one of the major pieces is Hedl, who's been injured a ton. And he's a decent player when he's healthy. Like
Yeah.
I'd argue he's like a pretty like I don't want. I'd say a pretty good third line center. I would say when he's healthy. But the thing is that he's not healthy all the time, right? And he's making $4.5 million, and now he's getting put into the 2C role. I don't really love it, to be quite honest with you. And I feel like with the second trade, they really rushed things. Like it was just like it was like they almost like they made their team worse, and it was like almost hours later, it was like, okay, we can't be worse. Like we got to make our team better, and they thought going out and getting a defenseman would do that. I like Marcus Pettersson. I think he's been a pretty like undervalued defenseman throughout like his time, even in Pittsburgh. The one thing with him is though is that I don't know if it's just because he's on the Penguins. He's a really good defensive defenseman who's actually been awful defensively this year. So I don't know if like a change of scenery now is going to help change things. I would argue probably, just considering the track record. He's decent offensively and he's decent moving the puck, but I think that's the one thing that Vancouver needed is a puck moving defenseman. Like
Yeah.
outside of Hughes, Hronek's decent at it, but I wouldn't argue that Pettersson is kind of good enough at it. I think he's going to come in, eat a lot of minutes, and be a pretty good player for them. But if you're looking at the grand scheme of things, like, okay, you're shipping out Miller, Danton Heinen, Vinny Desharnais for Hedel, Marcus Pettersson, Drew O'Connor.
Yeah.
And you're also giving up a prospect you drafted in the third round last year in Melvin Firmstrom. I don't think he's got really high upside. I think he's kind of like more going to be like a bottom six NHLer if he makes it. So I don't think it's the biggest deal, but I just think in the grand scheme of things is that you don't know if you're re-signing Pettersson. And to be honest, they've given out bad contracts on July 1 in the past. Like, what if he comes in and lights it up and then he's asking for $5-6 million? And then with Hedel, it's like he's a decent player, but it's like, dude, I hate to say it, but he's probably one concussion away from like taking another year off.
I think
Right?
he's
Like
one concussion away from like straight up retiring, to be honest, man.
I would have preferred them to like get a decent prospect, like even like a Brett Berard or like maybe you take a swing if they're willing to do Othman. Like I think even though that's like more for the future, I just think like if you're thinking long term, that might be better just because of Hedel's injury history. That's the one thing that sets me off. It's like I don't mind them getting a first and flipping it because I thought they were going to do that because probably weren't going to get like a really good player in return for Miller. But I don't get why when you get a first and a good roster player, it's a guy who's had a ton of injury history, who is signed to term, and then you go out and get like a rental defenseman. I don't really get it. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be like, I'm not sitting here saying like I'd grade them like an F, but like, I mean, I don't think they kind of utilized it to the best of their ability, even considering they were in a bad situation. Like, do you feel any different? Like, do you think like, okay, they actually got like a middle six center and a top 4D, and they wanted to get rid of Desharnais, and then they got like I would argue Drew O'Connor is like a pretty solid bottom six forward. Like he had 35 points last year. He's big. Like I actually think he can help them a lot in the bottom six, right? Like, but I don't know. Like, do you think that's enough, or do you think like two of these guys are rentals and dude, like you're potentially trading a guy who's like a top 15 player in the league the past 2 years? I'd argue.
Like for me, what they did with the first round pick, going out and getting Pettersson and O'Connor, I don't have that many issues with that. Yeah, it's a bit risky because it's a rental piece, and like the Canucks, they're not a lock to make the playoffs right now either, right? So if they miss the playoffs and Pettersson walks in free agency, then like going out and using that first round pick that you got back, you're gonna look back and you're gonna be like that was absolutely awful. But when we were talking about Marcus Pettersson a few weeks ago, we were sort of thinking that the asking price for him was probably going to be about a first round pick. So I don't have too many issues with that trade. Where more of my issues are coming from is I agree with you, man. Like Philip Hedl, I like him as a player when he's healthy, but there's so many question marks surrounding his health since he's come into the NHL, right? Like you don't really know for certain what you're getting when you're bringing in Philip Hedl. And you're sending out JT Miller, dude. Like this is a player that probably I agree with you. He probably has been a top 15, top 20 player around the NHL over the past year and a half, right? Like if you're the Vancouver Canucks, I think they should have gotten more back. And what I'm sort of wondering is like how many teams were really in contact with Vancouver and being serious about trading for JT Miller, because the fact that the Vancouver Canucks got Hedel and a first back essentially for JT Miller really makes me think that like there weren't too many teams in on it, because you'd sort of think that if there were other teams in on JT Miller, then Vancouver would be getting more back from New York or be trading JT Miller to another team for more, right? Like, do you think the Rangers were sort of the only team in on Miller, or do you think there was other teams in?
I personally believe they didn't just talk to Miller about like a ton of other options, really. Like maybe you're right. Like maybe teams were lowballing and it was like not even worth bringing it up to him. But I think with the no move clause, it's just like I don't know. You're kind of strapped, right? Like you can only really do what he wants, like where he wants to go. So I mean, if he kind of verbally said like I'd like to go to New York, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
you're
know.
kind of
You're kind of strapped in that sense. I will say I actually don't mind Mancini. I think he can probably be like a decent number 5 in the future. So I mean, I'd probably keep an eye on him. I think the Canucks are going to give him a lot of opportunity. But I mean, like I don't know. The thing is with Hedel, it's like you're kind of more like betting on him becoming a top 6 center. And it's like I don't
yeah.
think he's ever really proved he's one. Like he had 45 points that one year. I'd argue like he's kind of like getting there, but like the injuries and stuff, man, have just set him back. I just think it's way too much. You're kind of there's way too much hope in this deal instead of getting like a different guy back who kind of has that upside and has shown it a lot recently. And the thing is, it's like what you were saying about Pedersen. I kind of agree that a first was probably the ass, but to be honest with you, I right now the Rangers are in a playoff spot, dude. Like this is like the 15th overall pick right now. Like
Yeah.
that's a bit more than I thought they'd probably get for Pedersen, to be honest. Like I honestly give Dubas kudos for this trade right now. Like you're getting a potentially 15th overall pick for Marcus Pedersen on an expiring contract. Like I was more thinking a team like maybe it's the Jets and like they're winning their division and the picks like at the bottom 7 in the first round. Like I don't know. Like if we're talking about Pittsburgh, pretty solid move for them, I think, to be honest. They get Desharnais back, who's a bottom pairing defensive defenseman, but dude, they haven't really played good defense this year. So he's a guy that might be able to help them, right? Like they're trying to get assets for their players that they can move. That's a good move for them, I think, for sure. Getting a first round pick. At worst, it transfers to next year, and it's like the Rangers probably turn it around next year, and it's like a bottom 7-8 pick. But like that's kind of what I thought it would be anyway. And if you're looking at it too, like next year's draft's even deeper than this.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a win for the Penguins, in my opinion. Like I like in this trade, I would say. But like I mean, I think Marcus Pedersen can definitely help the Canucks. It's just that I don't know if it's exactly what I think they needed. Like I'm still not convinced they're making the playoffs.
Yeah,
I'm
neither
really
am I.
not. I think Hughes is going to have to drag them in. And then either Demko is going to have to figure it out or they might have to ride Lankinen for a bit because he's been pretty good.
And you're gonna need Elias Pettersson to really step it up too here, because
For sure.
he
So
has had a
the
bit of a
thing
slower season, but
so Friedman reported that the trade talks are dialing back it with him right now, like in the Canucks perspective, because they want to see how he's going to do now. But I don't think they're not willing to move him. Like, I don't think that just because Miller's done, like, I don't really know what the Canucks plans are here. So if Pedersen doesn't start like figuring it out, like he could be on the move too. Like Rutherford is not afraid to blow this thing up, it seems
yeah,
like. Because now it's like if you don't trust Pedersen, you move him. Like, dude, if you're not gonna make the playoffs, like, is Demko next? Like, he's only got a year left after this. Like, he hasn't been that healthy. Like, do you try to move him too if you're trying to blow everything up? But if you're not, like, I would also argue, like, honestly, dude, they should be trying to sign Lankinen. Like, he's helped save their season. Like,
he's
I
been
would
phenomenal
argue,
so far.
besides Quinn Hughes, he's been their MVP. And his numbers aren't fantastic, but dude, this is a guy that wasn't even signed until fucking like training camp, and he took 875 grand. I never understood why no one signed him. I thought he's been a pretty solid goalie, like as a backup the last couple of years. But dude, he's basically been a starting goalie this year, putting up like a 905. And I'd be looking to sign him for a couple of years. You could probably get him for like 2.5 million.
Yeah, I think they could get him for around there, 2.5 million to 2 million for a couple of years, and he has been phenomenal for him. And to your point about what are the next steps, sort of for the Canucks, I think I think now that they've traded JT Miller, we're sort of going to see things settle down for them until the summer, and then depending on what happens between now and whoever wins the Stanley Cup, or like I think that there's going to be a lot of answers that the Canucks managements are going to get right. So it's like I think heading into the draft, heading into free agency for them is when we're going to have a lot of those questions answered. So it's like maybe then we'll have better picture on if Elias Pettersson maybe is sort of on his way out the door. As you mentioned, Demko, maybe at that point we'll know, like, yeah, it's time for the Canucks to blow things up. Before we sort of move on from these two trades, what do you think about the Rangers sort of and what they did here?
Well, if you look at it like in the grand scheme of things, like from even a couple months ago, like the way they just handled their cap situation, like you're moving out Truba, you don't have to take on, or sorry, you don't have to give up any assets to move them, and you kind of replace that salary with JT Miller. I think it's a really good move for the Rangers. I think for the long haul, though, like they're gonna have to figure it out internally now because like it's like their
Yeah.
top guys have no trades and all this, right? Like Drury's pretty strapped with this. So I think at this point it's on the players. I kind of give kudos for him, like not firing Laviolette and kind of letting him stick it out because coaches are kind of uses the scapegoat quite often, and he seemed like he didn't really want to do this in this sense. I think it's a really good move. It makes their center depth even better. Like, okay, I know we're all hating on Zibanejad, but I mean, I know he's kind of started on the wing these first couple games with Miller, but let's be real. If he's playing third line center at some point, like you're in a pretty good spot. Like giving him less matchups and stuff like that, right? I think it would be pretty good for him. But or else maybe try him on the wing here. See what maybe the less responsibility will help him play good offensively, maybe even a little bit better defensively, that it's not as much responsibility. I think it's a pretty good move, man. And you're bringing in a guy who's like kind of gritty into their top six too. I don't really think they have like a ton of that outside of like Trocheck. So I think it's a really good move for the Rangers. Honestly, they're saying like, oh, you gave up a pick, and it's like top 13, like you could begin with the 14th pick or whatever. And I'm like, who gives a fuck, dude? It's JT Miller. Like I would argue, like we're talking about him not being on his game, and he's like still hovering around a point a game. Like, I don't know, you put him with fucking Panarin and shit. Like I think it'd be fine. Like I think if they miss the playoffs and it's the 14th overall pick, I'd still say it's worth it. But 100%.
I'm fine with that because, as you mentioned, this draft class this year, it's not as deep as other years. The New York Rangers, they already have some decent prospects sort of in the pipeline, right? Like you mentioned Brennan Othman, they got Gabe Perreault, who's going to be in the NHL at some point. And the other thing is, like, the Rangers are in win now mode. Like they don't want to go into a rebuild. If they were going into a rebuild, we probably would have seen some other trades like a Mika Zibanejad on his way out.
Well, no, when you give
that.
your goalie almost $12 million, like you're not going into a rebuild. You got to figure it out now, right? I mean, I give him kudos for the move, dude. I think it's a pretty good move overall. And also, we're talking about like the Hedo aspect. Like, dude, he was taking up $4.5 million of their cap, like being in and out of the lineup. He's on LTIR. He's not. You don't really know what's happening. Well, you brought in an $8 million center, but I'd argue, well, you only really brought in like a $4.5 million center because you got rid of another $4 million guy, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Like, it's not really that bad, to be honest. And like, even like Kako's been good in Seattle, but like I'd also argue like Borgen is kind of the defenseman they needed. Like, he's kind of grittier, he's big, he can skate. Like, they don't really have a bunch of huge defensemen, right? Like, Fox is small. Like, Miller's big, but he doesn't play like it.
Yeah, he doesn't play big.
And like Lindgren plays like it, but he's not big, right? Like he's a smaller guy, but he plays like he's a warrior, right? Like he blocks shots with his fucking face. So it's like, I don't know. I kind of give them kudos for their moves recently, dude. Like I'm still under the belief that they're going to get in the playoffs. I think there's too many games left that they're going to be able to figure it out.
I'm with you on this, man. Like, bringing in JT Miller, you know he's going to come in, sort of change up that locker room a little bit. He's going to add to that first line. Like, that first line of Panarin, JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad, if all three of those guys are rolling, dude, like, that could be one of the best lines in the NHL.
Yeah.
And then you still got, like, Lafreniere, Will Cooley, he's been phenomenal this year. You got Chris Kreider.
With Trocheck, yeah.
You got Trocheck still. Like, they're a very deep team.
I think what they could try to look for now, if they try to do something else, is like look for a guy who can play third line center, but also a guy that like he would also be willing to move over to the wing if like you
Yeah.
want to run Zibanejad. Like honestly, dude, like you know who I think would be really good for them and can move over to the wing if they were willing to sell is Jake Evans. I think he'd look fucking great in New York, dude. He's a gritty bottom six guy. He's a good secondary scoring. If you want to move Zibanejad to 3C, he can fucking play 4C or even play the right wing. So like I kind of a little player like that where you're not giving up like a really high pick. You know what I mean? Maybe prospects get it done and like a lower end pick, but something like that, I think that would really help them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think this team's going to make the playoffs. There's too many games left, and I think this team's going to start to get on a little roll here over the next few weeks. Let's move on and talk about our next trade. Earlier in the week, the Calgary Flames added to their roster. They traded Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Pelche, a 2025 second round pick, and a 2028 seventh round pick to the Philadelphia Flyers for Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost. Mark, I'm going to start off, man. I love this trade for the Flames. I think they made out really good. You're getting a middle six center in Morgan Frost, right? Like he can probably play second line center at some points. He can play third line center. And then you're also getting Joel Farabee, who a couple of seasons ago, he had 50 points or so, right? So you're getting two fairly good players. They're 24 and 25 years old, so there's still potential there for them to grow. And what did the Flames give up? They gave up Andrei Kuzmenko, who has less than 8 goals this year. And you gave up Jacob Pelche, who's sort of been in and out of the lineup for the Flames, up and down from the AHL. Like the biggest asset that Philly got in this deal was the second round pick. So the Flames, they really didn't give up too much at all. And you're getting two pretty good NHL players in return that still have potential. I love the trade. I might be a little biased. How do you feel about the trade, Mark, for the Flames?
No, I think this trade really benefits you guys, man. I think that I think it's more they're taking on a flyer on a guy like Kuzmenko. But the thing with him is, dude, is that I think they're more trying to see if he can be good in Philly because he played with Michkov and Ska,
Yeah.
right? Like, so I think they're trying to see if like you bring the connection back, if that's going to work out. I mean, I think the more the upside on this deal for Philly is that you get the second and you get out of the term of Farabee's deal. But to be honest with you, I don't think like I Farabee is underperforming right now compared to
Yeah,
last
he
year.
is.
But I don't mind him making $5 million for a couple more years. I think that if he starts playing better, like he's totally worth that deal. And you have him where it's not like he's an RFA this summer. He plays well, you sign him for more. That's kind of what you're gonna have to deal with Frost, right? Depending what I don't think he's gonna be do a massive upgrade, but I also don't know if he's kind of willing to sign long term, considering I think his upside is more than what he's shown. To be honest with you, like I'll be straight with you. I think that Frost has more of an upside than Farabee. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
It is the center factor. It is. I think that Frost is more skilled, but I think that if Farabee scoring like 25 plus a year, which I totally think he's capable of, like him making $5 million is no issue at all. I just think that Frost is more going to be of a line driver than Farabee is, to be quite honest with you. And I think that Farabee could be a top six winger. I think we're more looking at him as like a middle six guy that could score 25. But I actually believe that Frost can be a legitimate top six center. I do. I've always thought that he has a ton of skill. I don't know if it's. I'm really curious to see him now without like Torts, because Torts never really seemed to like him a lot. Meanwhile, he isn't actually like a pretty good 200-foot center too. Like he's played some reliable defensive hockey the past couple of years. Is that Torts kind of forcing him to? Will we see the same thing? I don't really know. You guys losing Pelche, I feel like he kind of like he's starting to come into his own a bit, like
He
with the
was.
Flames. Like he was also like on waivers this year. And that's why you're looking at it as a Flames perspective. You're getting rid of a bad contract in Kuzmenko. You're getting rid of a guy that you were willing to let go for free months ago. And then you're getting rid of a second round pick, which at this point is what, 45 to 55?
Around there.
You're losing out on like Jacob Battaglia in this year's draft, basically.
Yeah.
That's what you're losing out on. And I don't really think it's a big deal whatsoever. I think that You guys gain a lot of upside from this deal, and you're also looking at Conroy's perspective, right? Like, I'm sorry, as much as you want this team to be bad, you guys aren't bad. Like
We're not.
you're
Yeah,
competing for the playoffs. You're bringing in, okay, Zari's out. This Conroy's kind of rewarding the team, dude. Like you're bringing in, you haven't really been able to score a lot of goals. You've been relying on playing good defensive hockey and Wolf playing incredible. Bring in some guys that can potentially get you an easy goal. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe Farabee, there's a lot less pressure now. I just never really felt like he was going to fit in that lineup in Philly long term. They have a lot of wingers
yeah, they do.
now, right? So he had 50 points last year, dude. Like we're not talking about he had 50 points in 21. Like this was last season, dude, right? And this is why I also was pretty optimistic when you guys got Kuzmenko. I mean, that didn't work out, obviously. I don't really know what that was. Maybe he just had a really good rookie season and he hasn't figured it out. But it's why I was optimistic about him going to you guys, too. I was like, bro, this guy had 39 goals last year, right? So I don't know. And the thing is, I think with Farabee and Frost, it's like you're not acquiring like a 30 and 31-year-old. Like you're getting a 24 and 25-year-old.
That's the thing I love about this deal, dude.
Yeah.
Like the thing I love about the
They're
deal is
under
that
team control right now, too, dude. Like Frost is an RFA this summer. He's not a UFA. This isn't like you're going out and getting a rental. You gave up a second round pick, dude. You guys got 3 firsts this year. This isn't the same. Probably maybe 2 firsts, depending on that deal and the conditions, right? But this isn't a very deep draft. Honestly, you giving up a second in this year's draft compared to next year's draft, I think is even more of a bonus. Not that it's like they're going to be getting snagging players in the second round next year, but there's more top end talent next year, and I'd argue it's a deeper draft, right? So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't see really any downside. I guess the only downside is really if Farabee really doesn't work out and you're stuck with that contract for a couple years. But I would say that personally, I think that there's like a 30% chance of that happening.
yeah. I think that's a real only downside in that is the Fairby contract, and if he really is not good, then you're stuck with paying him 5 mil for 3 more years after this. But even with the cap going up over the next few seasons, even having him making 5 mil, like it's not the end of the world. It's not going to be as bad as like some other contracts around the league or paying a guy 7 mil, right? Like I think if you're paying Fairby 5 mil and he doesn't sort of get back to what he was last season, I don't think it's the absolute end of the world with the cap going up. But I agree with you, man. Like the biggest reason I love this move for the Flames is the fact that they're not only making the team better for now, but also for the future. Because these guys, as you mentioned, they're under team control. They're still young and they have potential. So I think the Flames made out great with this trade. When I look at it for Philly's perspective, I get that you want to bring in maybe Kuzmenko because he did play with Michkov over in Russia, and you are sort of taking a gamble on him. And then you're also trying to get out of Farabee's contract. But honestly, I still think they should have gotten more than what they did. You're giving up
The
two
one
guys under
thing
25 with potential like that, and you're getting back. The best thing you're getting back is a second round pick, essentially. I think they should have gone back a bit more. I don't think it's a first round pick, but I think they should have maybe gone like a second round pick and a third round pick or a second and fourth. What do you think, though? You think the Flyers made out fine?
I wouldn't say fine. Like, I mean, I'd say Calgary won this deal. They definitely could have got a bit more. Um, the Kuzmenko thing, it's like, is it going to work this year and you extend him or does it not? It's a decent risk to take. Maybe it helps Michkov. Like, that's the whole thing, right? Like, if this helps Michkov, like, that's a huge win for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to think about it in their sense. Like, if it works out, it's going to be good for them. I think that they see Peltier as um like a kind of like a water bug guy who can chip in offensively, but more they're looking at him to be like probably like a third line winger in the sense of like
Yeah.
Fairby wants more than that, you know? So it's like he probably fits into that role better. And to be honest, I think like Flyers fans could probably love him, like the way Peltier plays, right? Because he kind of always gives it his all. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
actually starting to produce now. Like I think that, and the thing is too is like, do you think Danny Briere not that Pelche has a lot of upside, but do you think that he sees like himself a little bit in Pelche?
Maybe a
Just
bit
being the smaller guy, like
smaller guy that plays with his heart
works
out, dude.
hard, given more of an opportunity, he's able to produce. I think he might see himself in Pelche a little bit. I think the upside of getting out of like the term of Farabee's contract allows you like flexibility to go out and maybe do something else that you're looking to do. But the one thing I think that's a very like a head scratcher to me is like, bro, they're not deep on center before this trade, and now they're even less deep.
Yeah.
That's what I don't fucking understand, dude. Like, are they gonna go out now and try and get a center? Like, do they think like Luchenko's coming in next year and being a top six center? Like, I don't know, dude. They like, I hate to say it, but they might think that. Like, he made the team this year. Like, I don't know. I really don't know. The thing is, it's like I'm more like looking at this like I feel like they're gonna go out on July 1st and give out some dumbass contract with this cap space. That's what
I
I
could
think's
see
gonna
that.
happen.
I think Sam
That's
Bennett
why
might go
I'm
there
not
on an 8
super
by 8.
optimistic about it. Or maybe, dude, what if Kuzmenko comes in? Dude, what if Kuzmenko comes in and did exactly like he did in Calgary at the end of the season? And then they extend him. Like and it's like then you're looking back and it's not a good deal. It's just I don't know. Like but also maybe they're looking for like another top pair defenseman, like to play with Sanheim with that cap space. They'll go out and get something. Like I don't really know. Like the thing is now it's like they have a lot of flexibility on what they can do with this cap space going forward, like outside of this season. But I'm not too optimistic on like what they might do. But like maybe I'm also thinking of like the Flyers back a couple years ago. This is kind of a new
Yeah.
regime. Like I don't think Briere's done like a quote unquote like great job so far, but like I mean I don't think he's like anywhere close to like he should be fired. Like I mean like he's kind of at the beginning of his plan here, um, and like obviously taking Mitchkov in the draft was obviously a huge plus, right? So
For me,
I don't know, man. Like I just don't know. Like the thing is too, it's like bro, like I'm sorry, like they're going nowhere in the next couple of years unless they like get a goalie. And I know they have a couple good ones in the pipeline, but it's like those guys aren't really going to even like be making the NHL for another probably like 3 years, right? Like
yeah.
this is why I was all over like, bro, they should be calling like maybe they have been like for like a guy like Gibson. But if Anaheim's also asking for like a first rounder plus, it's like I'm not doing that, you know?
For me, this trade, I don't know, it just doesn't really move the needle enough either way for the Flyers, right? Like, they're sort of getting worse with this trade, but like you're only getting a second round pick back in a draft that we've talked about that isn't that deep, so it's like doesn't really move the needle too much that way into like the rebuild mode, getting younger, better players, and then they're not making themselves better either with what they got back too, right? Like you mentioned the center depth, sort of a weird question. I have seen stuff today too that Elliot Friedman saying that Philly, like, they're not done making moves. Scott Lawton right now in Philly, like, there's been a lot of question marks. Is he going to get traded before the trade deadline? If he gets traded, like, that's another centerman that's on his way out. So it's like, who are you playing at center, dude? Like, I know you mentioned, like, they probably are hoping that Luchenko can come in and play the whole season in the NHL next year. But that's next year, right? It's like, what are you going to do for the remainder of this season? Are you just going to have no center depth, or are you going to have to play one of these wingers at center? Maybe like will a guy like Pelche maybe get forced to play some minutes at center? It, it was just sort of a head scratcher for me for Philly why they're making this move. I get the whole clearing cap space out, but I don't necessarily think that they really needed to clear out that cap space, and I just don't think it fully moved the needle either way. And I know when we were talking when this trade sort of first broke, you said Joel Farabee to Calgary, and we were sort of talking about that. And then when we saw Morgan Frost was involved in the deal 20 minutes, half an hour later, whatever it was, we were both a bit surprised that Frost was sort of going out in the deal as well. But I'm happy for the Flames. For the Flyers, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with all this money that they're now saving. Let's move on and talk about the last trade of this week. It was wrapped up by the Dallas Stars getting Mikael Granlund and Cody Ceci from the San Jose Sharks for a 2025 first round pick and a 2025 third round pick. Mark, what are your thoughts for the Dallas Stars here?
They're definitely a better team, and no doubt. They were looking for kind of like a middle six. I don't know if it's specifically like a centerman, but without kind of a guy to replace Sagan. You know what I mean? And I think Granlund's a pretty good replacement in that sense. Dallas loves bringing in guys that can play center and play the wing. They like having options on draws. Granlund's that. He can play center. He can play the wing. He's got that Finnish connection. There's a bunch of Finns on that team. He's been really good since he's got to San Jose, man. I'm really curious to see how he can adjust in this short period, coming over to Dallas even before Four Nations here. I think it's going to be a huge comfort for him going to a team with a lot of guys that he's played with internationally. I'm curious to see if his production is going to be good, though. Like, I mean, he went over to Pittsburgh midseason a couple of years ago, and he wasn't very good. So I think, I mean, that might be a little bit of a worry for me. I'll be honest with you. I do not understand the Cody Ceci part of this deal. I don't fucking get it at all. They just brought in another player that, sorry if you hear my dog barking in the background, but you brought in another player that I'd argue is around the same caliber as the other three right-handed defensemen that you have on your team right now in Dumba, Niels Lundqvist, and Lyubushkin. I personally believe that they think Cody Ceci is a top four right-handed defenseman. That's what I think, and I think that they believe that they have filled this hole that I believe that they've needed to fill all season long. There was no salary retention on this deal at all. San Jose's already used all three of their spots. They have another spot opening up next year when Burns' deal expires this year. So that really wasn't an option unless a third team kind of came in. I will say I really like bringing in Granlund. I don't like bringing in Ceci because you just brought in $8.25 million. You're able to put Sagan on LTIR, but now you only have about $1 million and a bit to spend, and I don't really think that all their needs are met here.
Yep.
I really don't at all. I think that the Sharks got some incredible value in this deal, to be honest with you. Like, even if you argue Granlund's the first, Ceci's the fourth, like, fuck, that's fine with me, considering Ceci's also making, like, I also value, like, the actual cap hit in the trade, right? Like, if you were paying a fourth for Ceci at half retained and it was 1.5, and then you have more money to go out and spend for someone else, I'd be like, you know what? The fourth is fine. The fact that you're bringing him in at $1 that he's not worth and you're paying the fourth, I don't think that's good value. That's the way I see things. Other people disagree. That's fine. Personally, do you think Granlund is worth a first? Like, take Ceci out of this deal and take the fourth out. Would you, as Dallas, pay for Granlund a first-round pick with no salary retention? So he's making $5 million.
I think it's worth it based off the way he's been playing this year. And for Dallas, too, you don't got to worry too much about the salary cap with Granlund, at least, because you have Sagan on LTIR right now, right? Like, when you're looking at the forward group for the Dallas Stars, I think their forward group is not really any holes there, especially considering Sagan's probably going to be back some point in the playoffs, right? Like, I think they're good. I think they're good with their forwards, but I'm with you, man. Like, on defense, dude, your three right shot defensemen right now are Dumba, Ceci, and Lyubushkin. Like, I think all those guys are sort of like, at best, number fours.
I honestly, I don't even think that. I'd say I'd argue they're all like number fives. Like, I wouldn't want any of them in my top four. That's what I think. If you're going for the cup, dude, I don't think any of them are in my top four.
See, I think maybe you could get away with one of them being in your top four, like depending on sort of what your decor look like. But having those three guys,
that is fair. Honestly, dude, I think that I would want Lyubushkin playing on the second pair with like Harley. Because I'd argue out of all of them, he's the best defensively. He's the most aggressive. Like, Cody Ceci is an average defensive defenseman with no offensive upside. Yeah. At least with Lyubushkin, you're getting pretty solid defensive play with like some aggression.
Yeah, he's a bigger body too. He's not afraid to throw his weight around.
When I saw Cody Ceci was in this deal, in my mind went directly to, okay, honestly, I think the Sharks are probably getting Dumba like back. Like
Yeah.
in a veteran deal, swap out the money. I would have been more okay with that, to be honest. Um, like, okay, if you were the GM of Dallas, would you have not preferred to go, okay, I'll give you a first for Granlund, no money retention, fuck CC, go out and give out a second and a prospect and get Connor Murphy. And
Yeah,
then
I
he
would have rather done that.
plug him into the top four. Because the thing is, it's like he eats a lot of minutes. He plays really good defense consistently. He's been on a bad team, and I honestly think I would much prefer to do that.
Yeah, I would have rather done that as well. Like I get you're sort of doing it both within one deal here, and you're not giving up as much for the whole CC part, but I just don't think CC really fills anything or moves anything enough on the like within their decor, dude. I think their decor, the way I look at their decor right now is those sort of the same I looked at their decor a couple weeks ago. Like not much has really changed. Yeah, they
Oh,
got a bit
I don't
deeper on the
believe for
right
one.
hand side, but
I don't believe for 1 second their decor has gotten better from this trade. I
yeah,
don't. Like
overall,
I don't think Cody Cece does anything. Like I don't think he. I don't even. I wouldn't even argue he's like a defenseman that they don't have. Like
I think I think he's like I
I'd
think
argue
him,
he's
Matt
slightly.
Dumba.
Honestly, dude, this is going to sound harsh. I honestly believe Dumba's trash. I don't think he's good anymore. Like I think he used to be good, but now he's relied on. He's a physical defenseman who doesn't put up offense anymore, and he doesn't. He's not even reliable defensively.
Yeah,
And it's like you look at every other guy. It's like so in that sense, it's like I'd argue CC's a slight upgrade on Dumba. I don't think he's better than Labushkin. And it's like they don't trust Niels Lundqvist at all. He played in the playoffs last year, and they were riding 5D. Like he was playing like 3 minutes a game.
yeah,
So he's going to be out of the lineup. Like he's not going to play in the playoffs.
yeah. He's out of the lineup right now, and that's even with Heiskanen out. So when Heiskanen returns, dude, like there's gonna be no way that he's gonna be in the lineup.
Okay, and here's my question now though with the way Dallas's defense is set up. Okay, so Heiskanen's out, but he's coming back, right? He'll
Yeah,
be back. Usually, their first pair is Lindell, Heiskanen, because Heiskanen plays the right side a lot,
yeah, it
and
is.
then you could go Harley, Labushkin, and then bottom pair would be this is before the CC deal, by the way, and then their bottom pair is Brendan Smith, Dumba. So now with this trade, you're bringing in another right hand D. So you're forcing Heiskanen to probably play the left. Harley will be the second pair. Then what? Lindell's your third left D after being a top pair guy? Or do you move him to the second pair and you put Harley on the third pair? That doesn't make fucking
Maybe
sense.
they do that, or maybe they put two righties on the third pair. Maybe Dumba's
Yeah.
healthy scratch or something. Like
Or you
I
force
don't know.
Dumba to play the left. Do you get what I'm saying though? Like even
Yeah,
before it was like I'd argue like their top four might on D might not look as scary like now, right? Or like I don't even know what their plan is with this dude. It's like we've been pumping Dallas's tires a lot the past basically since we started this
oh
podcast.
yeah,
They're a cup contender, and I'd still argue they are a cup contender. But I'm telling you right now, dude,
they
their
gotta.
defense don't fucking scare me one bit.
I
Besides
agree with you, dude.
Heiskanen and Harley, Lindell is a good top four defenseman, but that is the only they have three top four defensemen. That's it.
I almost wonder, dude, if Dallas isn't done making deals here with their back end, man. Like, could you see it? Could you see a world where Matt Dumba gets shipped out, and then they bring in a true like number four defenseman, and then your bottom pairing
Maybe.
you got Cody Cece playing there? Like, do you think that that's maybe why they did bring in Cody Cece, being like, this is a guy who's going to replace Matt Dumba, and we're not done making moves on our back end?
Maybe that is, but I guess that's why I said I was like I almost thought Dumbo was going to San Jose,
Yeah,
and then I would be a bit more optimistic, being like, okay, Dumba's signed next year, CC's not. You're getting out of that extra term of the deal.
Yep.
You realize it's not working on defense. That's fine. You can sign guys and you make mistakes. It happens all the time. But like that would have made much more sense to me. Because like I said, I'd argue CC is an upgrade on Dumba, like a little bit. Because
Yeah.
he actually plays good defense, right? Or like average defense. But the fact that they have like 3 of them now, it's like, oh man, I don't know. Like that right side is like, oh, like I would argue Montreal has a better number 4 defenseman than Dallas does in like Alex Carrier.
Yeah. Yeah, you could
Seriously, yeah. I totally believe that for one. I totally believe that. Okay, before like we kind of end it though, like dude, I think San Jose made out really good in this deal. Like you get another first round pick, you get a 4th that can become a conditional 3rd. You also freed up $8 million in cap space. Like, dude, like if I'm fucking Mike Grier, dude, send me your bad contracts for the rest of the season. Fucking send them. Give me your picks. Send them. We got $8 million here. Honestly, obviously not like a guy like similar to like a Kuzmenko, a competitive team. You want to free up $3 million for the rest of the season? Send me them. Give me a pick. I'd be, if I was Mike Grier, dude, I'd be doing that all season long. Especially if you can get like a veteran guy or something too to help the young guys. Like losing Granlund's a big deal for them. Like obviously they weren't good, but like now you're getting even less scoring coming in. Like,
dude, I'm with you on San Jose, man. I think they made out great here. They freed up cap space, got a 1st and a 3rd round pick. Yeah, the 3rd round pick, it's in this year's draft, and you're probably really not going to get a guy that's really going to be playing meaningful NHL minutes with that 3rd round pick, but you're still getting a pick back that you could flip into something, right? Like we know that Greer's not afraid of flipping around his picks to get some other young talent. I think, like honestly, man, I think Greer over the best maybe year to year and a half, I think you can make a solid argument that he has had the best asset management across the entire NHL. I just don't think he gets enough recognition because it's like San Jose is in rebuilding mode right now, and they're
I would
not
agree,
contending
dude.
yet. But like when you look at the
Like he
asset
might be
management
even
that
in the
he's had, it's
top
been
5
phenomenal.
GMs. He might even be in the top 5 GMs in accordance to like moves made to like
Oh
better the
yeah,
longevity of your franchise. Honestly, this is biased too, but I argue like Kent Hughes' asset management has been spectacular as
it
well. Like
has as well.
getting the first for Monahan and like all this stuff, like getting a first for Sherratt. Like, but yeah, I agree. But also you look at it in this sense, okay? San Jose came into this season with um 2 first round picks. One of them was Vegas's, right? Um, they ship it out for a Skarov, and then now you're getting one back for Granlund. So, like,
Yep.
dude, you still have 2 first round picks this year, and you got like your potential future goalie for like a guy that they legitimately got a first round pick in the Granlund deal for Carlson, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
like they almost got like you can hypothetically look at it like they almost got 2 firsts for Erik Karlsson. Like you obviously you could look at it in many different ways, right? But like yeah, their asset management's been phenomenal. Maybe, dude, who knows that they moved up to draft Dickinson. I think. Did they? Maybe they
I don't
didn't.
believe so.
No, actually, no. That was Minnesota moved up for Buium. That's what it
Yeah.
was. But like, you could also move up, right? Like, they might be pick, dude. They might get fucking Schaefer or like Haggins or Misa or fucking Martone. Like, maybe you move up with your second first too. Like, what if they like get a 3rd round pick for taking some stupid contract and then they package that 3rd with their late first to move up in the draft?
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that they could do, man. Like that's why, like, man, I'd be if I was a Sharks fan, dude, I'd be so excited because like you got good prospects now. You got like your future superstar player. Smith's looking pretty nice too. Like
Yeah, he is.
you got your future goalie, you got a ton of fucking assets, and you got a GM that's like, bro, this guy is not afraid to make moves whatsoever. Did you think Hurdle was getting traded last
Uh,
year?
so long ago now, I don't remember, but I wasn't 100% he was getting traded, but
Came out of
I had
nowhere.
thoughts that maybe he was at
It did
some
kind of
point.
come out of nowhere
Yeah.
because he wasn't a rental, right? But I don't know, man. He's willing to make moves here, and kind of better his team even in the offseason. Like you bring in a Toffoli and this, and you know what I mean? So I think the Sharks like kind of win this deal, but also like it's kind of hard to like pick a winner considering like, bro, if Dallas goes out and wins the cup, it's like they kind of win this
They're
deal.
laughing as well.
Like I'm sorry, you know what I mean? So it's like maybe Granlund pushes you over the edge, and it's like we're not even talking about the CC factor. Maybe they go out and do something else with their defense here. But I also think like them making this move now is probably decent because like if CC comes in and like they're kind of like, okay, you know what, like he is not the answer here. Like on second pairing right D, at
There's
least you
still
got
time to
another
fix
month
it.
to make a move. You know.
Yeah, and that's where I sort of think that maybe like they still will make a move, and maybe CC will. Maybe it will end up where CC is playing on your third pairing, and Matt Dumba's no longer a Dallas Star, and there's somebody else there playing within your top four. But there's still like it's crazy to think how many trades, especially big ones, have gone through over the past 2 weeks. And as you mentioned earlier on, like we still have 5 weeks until a trade deadline, dude. Like it's crazy to think how many names there are that are still out on the market and still may get traded here. Like I think there's still a ton of movement that's going to happen between now and Four Nations, and even Four Nations after, between there and the trade deadline. It's going to be a crazy next month and a half or so.
Okay, I got one more. I got one question for you before we go.
Yeah.
I know this is going to be hard to predict, but pick okay 1 to 2 players in the league that you think could be the next traded.
1 to 2 players that are going to be the next traded.
Like if you got one guy, say it. If you think there could be more than one, bro.
I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with an interesting one here. I'm gonna go Trevor Zegras.
really,
He's gonna be a
okay.
Colorado Avalanche.
You heard that rumor too, eh?
I'm loving that rumor, dude. I'm loving that.
I think
Trevor
McKinnon will
Zegras,
rip that guy to shreds, dude.
maybe that's what he needs. He needs a little tough love from Nate Dogg.
Trevor Zegers.
Trevor Zegras,
That's
I'm
an
gonna
in.
go with, and after that, let me think. I'm gonna go Trevor Zegras, and I'm gonna go. hmm, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Connor Murphy. I think there's gonna be
Man, you
teams
know
that are
who's
gonna
been talking
bring
more
him
and more
in.
about getting dealt is Seth Jones.
Yeah, I don't like. I don't know what team really wants to bring him on with his cap hit. Like,
See, I thought
I
honestly,
find it
I was
interesting.
more thinking if you could get his cap down to like 6, I think like Dallas would be a good spot for him.
Even six, do you really want to be paying him six, dude? Because
I'd
it's
only
not that.
argue he's slightly overpaid at 6, and the thing is, it's like I don't see Chicago retaining more than 3.5.
I guess Dallas, it's all right. Like I'm sort of thinking the term it would suck
He's from
for.
there, right?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the term would suck for Dallas, but Jamie Benn's coming off the books this year, so it's like,
Sagan's going to be off too. Like I know he's not affecting
yeah.
it at the moment, but he's coming off. I think in the next year or two.
So it's like for
And like
Dallas,
if
that
I
could
was
work
them, I'd
out.
like to re-sign Ben if I can. Obviously, it's going to be a way less cap hit. He might even be signing like an over 35 deal. Sagan's on year 6 of 8,
Yeah,
so he's going to be he's a UFA in 2027. So that's a plus for them too, right? Is like they're going to have to pay Johnson, and obviously Stankoven really hasn't had the season we kind of expected, but he's still probably going to turn out to be a hell of a player. But it seems like the money's kind of like lining up nice for them in accordance to like when they got
yeah,
to pay guys, right? Like I don't think Johnson's going to be making 9.5, but it's like you can allocate some of that money from Ben to Johnson, and then maybe have a little bit left over to sign Ben. You know what I mean? And then like we didn't even talk about the way the cap's going up the next couple of years.
yep,
Christ, some of these top teams like are going to be kind of throwing a life preserver here in accordance to like might be able to re-sign some extra guys or you know what I mean, go out and actually pay for some depth at some point. It's crazy, dude. I was seeing some of the things like a $3.5 million player now. It's like equivalent salary percentage of the cap. It's like they're gonna like it's like 5.2. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of
yeah.
fucking crazy. That's why I'm looking at the Farabee deal and I'm like, Bro, if you look at it hypothetically in the cap in like 2 years, like it's like he'd be making 3.5.
Yeah, and like what 3.5 is like what a third line player. Like
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Yeah, there's a lot of trades this week throughout the NHL. There's going to be a lot more coming up here as we go on in the next month and a half or so till trade deadline. Overall, though, for everybody tuning in this episode, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week.